The sky burned orange and red as the Keith warships descended upon Proxima 7. This was the last human colony, the last place where humans could call home. Earth was gone, destroyed 3 years ago. The other colonies had fallen one by one. Now only this small world remained. Taiho pressed his back against the concrete wall of the civilian bunker. His rifle was nearly empty. His armor was cracked. Blood ran down the side of his face from a wound he could not remember receiving. Around him lay the bodies of his squad, 12 soldiers, his friends, his family, all dead. But behind him, pressed against the back wall of the bunker, were 43 civilians, children, mothers, old men. They were crying, praying, holding each other. Taiho had promised to protect them. He intended to keep that promise for as long as his heart continued to beat. The Keth soldiers came in waves. They were tall creatures, nearly 7 feet, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that glowed like dying stars. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity. Their empire spanned 40 star systems. They had never lost a war. Taiho did not care about any of this. He only cared about the door. For 18 hours, he held the door. When his rifle ran empty, he used his pistol. When his pistol ran empty, he used a knife. When the knife broke, he used his hands and whatever he could find on the ground. The Keth could not understand it. This small, soft creature with no claws, no fangs, no armor on his skin. Why would he not simply die? They sent 5 soldiers. Taiho killed them. They sent 10. He killed 8 before the other 2 retreated. They sent a war beast, a creature bred for slaughter. Taiho collapsed part of the ceiling on it and then finished it with a metal pole through its eye. By the time the Keth commander ordered his troops to stop, Taiho stood alone in a room filled with bodies. His own body was broken, 3 ribs cracked, left arm hanging useless, vision blurry from blood loss. But he was standing, and the civilians behind him were still alive. The Keth did not kill him. They were too curious, too amazed. They had conquered hundreds of species across the galaxy. They had never seen anything like this. Taiho was bound in energy chains and dragged aboard the flagship of the Keth fleet. The ship was called the Eternal Dominion, and it was larger than any city Taiho had ever seen. He was thrown into a holding cell with other human survivors. There were only 23 of them, 23 out of the 12,000 who had lived on Proxima 7. Among them was a woman named Hana. She was small, with short black hair and sharp eyes that had seen too much pain. She had been a slave in the Keth Empire for 5 years. She knew their language, their customs, their cruelty. "They will take us to the Empress," Hana told Taiho quietly. "She likes to see the conquered. It amuses her." Taiho said nothing. He simply sat in the corner and stared at the wall. His mind was empty. His heart was numb. Everyone he had ever loved was dead. His squad, his friends. Somewhere in the rubble of the colony, his younger sister Yuna. He had promised to protect her too. He had failed. 2 days later, the prisoners were brought before the throne. The throne room of the Eternal Dominion was a place of terrible beauty. The ceiling rose so high it disappeared into darkness. Strange lights floated in the air, like captured stars. The floor was made of something that looked like black glass, and beneath it, Taiho could see galaxies spinning slowly. It was a display of power, a reminder that the Keth owned the stars themselves. And at the center of it all sat Empress Vela. She was not what Taiho expected. Where other Keth were tall and thick with muscle, she was slender and graceful. Her skin was darker than the others, a deep blue like the ocean at night. Her 4 eyes were silver, and they held an intelligence that was almost frightening. She looked young, beautiful even by human standards, but Hana had told him the truth. Vela was over 200 years old. She had ruled the empire for more than a century. Thousands of species had knelt before her. Millions had died at her command. The other prisoners fell to their knees immediately. Humans, aliens from other conquered worlds. All of them pressed their foreheads to the cold floor. Taiho remained standing. The throne room went silent. Every Keth guard, every noble, every servant turned to stare at the human who dared to stand before their empress. General Ryun, the commander of the Imperial fleet, stepped forward. He was enormous even for a Keth, with scars covering his arms and hatred burning in his eyes. "Kneel, creature," he commanded. Taiho looked at him. Then he looked at the Empress. His face showed nothing. No fear, no anger, no hope, just empty, quiet patience. No, he said. Ryun moved to strike him, but a soft voice stopped him cold. Wait! Empress Vela rose from her throne. She descended the steps slowly, her long robes trailing behind her like liquid shadow. The crowd parted before her. She walked until she stood directly in front of Taiho, close enough that he could see the silver light pulsing slowly in her eyes. She was taller than him. She looked down at this small, broken human with something that might have been curiosity. You are the one, she said. Her voice was soft but carried through the entire room. The one who held the bunker. My soldiers speak of you. They say you killed 30 of them. They say you would not fall. Taiho said nothing. Why? Vela asked. Your people are defeated. Your world is ash. You must know you cannot win. So why do you still resist? Taiho met her eyes. 4 silver lights staring into 2 brown ones. Because I am still alive, he said simply. Something changed in Vela's expression. It was small, barely noticeable, but for just a moment the cold mask slipped, and Taiho saw something underneath. Interest, perhaps even respect. General Ryun stepped forward again. Empress, this creature is dangerous. He should be executed immediately. He is an insult to... He is interesting, Vela interrupted. She did not look away from Taiho. I have not been interested in a very long time. She turned and walked back to her throne. When she sat, she waved her hand lazily. Send him to the pits, she commanded. Let us see how long a human can survive when the galaxy watches. Taiho was dragged away. As the guards pulled him toward the door, he looked back one last time. Empress Vela was watching him. Her silver eyes followed him until the doors closed between them. That night in his cell, deep in the belly of the ship, Taiho sat in darkness. Hana was there, assigned as a handler for the new gladiators. The pits are death, she told him. No human has ever survived more than 3 fights. They put us against monsters on purpose. They think it is funny. Taiho looked at her. When is my first fight? Hana stared at him for a long moment. She had seen many humans in 5 years. She had watched them break, beg, give up. But this man was different. There was something in his eyes that she could not name. 3 days, she said finally. Taiho nodded and closed his eyes. 3 days. He had survived worse odds. And somewhere above him, an empress was watching. He did not know why that mattered. But somehow it did. In her private chambers, Vela sat before a screen that showed the feed from Taiho's cell. She watched him sit in silence. She watched him breathe slowly, calmly, like a man who had already accepted death and therefore could not be frightened by it. She had ruled for over 100 years. She had seen warriors from 1,000 worlds, but she had never seen eyes like his. This human was different. She did not yet understand how much that difference would change everything. The arena was a circle of blood-stained sand surrounded by walls of dark metal. Above these walls rose rows and rows of seats, climbing so high they seemed to touch the artificial sky projected on the ceiling. 10,000 Keth nobles sat in those seats. They wore beautiful clothes and drank sweet wine and laughed with each other. For them, this was entertainment, a pleasant way to spend an afternoon. For the creatures in the sand below, it was a death sentence. Taiho stood at the iron gate, waiting for it to open. He wore only simple cloth pants and no shoes. His body was still healing from the battle at the colony. The Keth had given him basic medical treatment, enough to keep him alive. Dead gladiators were not entertaining. Hana stood beside him in the tunnel. Her face was pale with worry. The creature they are sending against you is called a Vorn, she said quickly. It has 4 arms and skin like stone. Normal weapons cannot cut it. You need to find the soft spots. Under the jaw, behind the knees, inside the... I know, Taiho said calmly. Hana grabbed his arm. You do not understand. I have seen Vorns kill warriors twice your size in seconds. They are bred for murder. They feel no pain. They know no fear. You cannot... Hana, Taiho looked at her. His eyes were steady. Thank you for caring, but I have to go now. The gate began to rise. Light flooded the tunnel. The roar of the crowd washed over them like a wave. Taiho walked into the arena. The sand was warm under his bare feet. The lights were blinding after the darkness of the tunnels. He blinked, letting his eyes adjust, and looked around at the thousands of faces staring down at him. Most of them were laughing, pointing, making jokes to their friends. A human. They had sent a human into the arena. This would be over in moments. On the far side of the arena, another gate rose. The Vorn emerged. It was exactly as Hana had described. 7 feet tall, 4 massive arms ending in claws like curved blades. Its skin was gray and rough, like rock that had learned to walk. Its eyes were small and red and filled with hunger. A low growl rumbled from its throat as it saw Taiho. The crowd cheered. This was what they came to see. High above the arena, in a private viewing box draped with silk, Empress Vela watched. General Rion stood beside her, a satisfied smile on his scarred face. "The human will not last 30 seconds, Rion said. "This was a waste of a Vorn." Vela said nothing. She simply watched. In the arena, Taiho did not move. The Vorn circled him slowly, testing, evaluating. It was not a mindless beast. It was a killer that had learned to enjoy the killing. Then it charged. The Vorn was fast, much faster than something that size should be. It crossed the distance between them in heartbeats, all 4 arms reaching for Taiho's body. Taiho moved. He did not try to block. He did not try to fight. He simply was not where the claws expected him to be. He rolled under the Vorn's attack, coming up behind it, already moving again before the creature could turn. The crowd went quiet. That was unexpected. The Vorn roared and attacked again, and again, and again. Each time, Taiho slipped away at the last moment. He was bleeding. The claws caught him more than once, leaving red lines across his chest and back. But he would not stay still. He would not let the creature grab him. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5. The crowd began to murmur. This human should be dead. Why was this human not dead? Rion leaned forward, frowning. What is he doing? Why does he not fight back? Vela's silver eyes never left the arena. He is learning, she said softly. She was right. Taiho was not just surviving. He was studying. Every attack the Vorn made, he watched. Every movement, he remembered. He was building a map in his mind. Speed, reach, balance, weakness. 6 minutes into the fight, Taiho found what he was looking for. The Vorn's left rear leg was slightly slower than the others. An old injury, perhaps. It was small, almost invisible. But when the creature turned quickly to the right, there was a moment when it was not balanced. A moment when it was vulnerable. Taiho waited for that moment. The Vorn lunged again. Taiho did not dodge this time. Instead, he dropped to his knees and scooped up a handful of arena sand. As the creature's claws came down, he threw the sand directly into its small red eyes. The Vorn screamed. It was not truly hurt, but it was blind. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, it could not see. 3 seconds was enough. Taiho had found a bone in the sand, the remains of some previous fight, some previous death. It was broken into a sharp point. He grabbed it as he rolled past the Vorn's flailing arms. He came up behind the creature and jumped onto its back, climbing with desperate strength. The Vorn thrashed wildly, trying to throw him off. But Taiho held on. He found the soft spot that Hana had told him about, the place under the jaw where the stone-like skin was thin. He drove the bone shard in with all his strength. The Vorn made a sound like breaking glass. It stumbled forward 1 step, 2 steps. Then it fell. Taiho fell with it, landing hard in the sand. He lay there for a moment, breathing, bleeding, alive. The arena was silent. 10,000 Keth stared at the impossible scene before them. A human, a small, weak, soft human had killed a Vorn. It should not be possible. It was not possible. And yet the Vorn lay dead in the sand, and the human was rising slowly to his feet. Someone in the crowd began to clap, then another, then more. Soon the entire arena was filled with applause, not because they liked humans, not because they wanted Taiho to win, but because they had seen something they had never seen before, something truly entertaining. In her viewing box, Empress Vela felt her heart beating faster than it had in decades. She did not understand the feeling. She was not sure she wanted to understand it. Beside her, Ryun's face was dark with anger. A lucky strike, he said. Nothing more. He will die in his next fight. But Tai-Ho did not die in his next fight, or the one after that. Over the following weeks, he fought again and again. Each opponent was stronger, faster, more deadly than the last. And each time, Tai-Ho found a way to survive. He never won through power. He won through patience, through observation, through the simple refusal to give up. The crowds began to chant his name. Not kindly. They still saw him as less than them. But they could not deny that he was interesting. The human who would not die. The creature who had no right to survive but kept surviving anyway. Hana watched it all with growing hope and growing fear. Hope because Tai-Ho gave the other human slaves something they had not felt in years. Fear because she knew that nothing good could last in this empire. She was right to be afraid. General Ryun had seen enough. This human was making a joke of the arena, making a joke of the entire empire. It had to end. He went to the arena masters and arranged a special fight. 3 opponents at once. All of them veteran gladiators who had killed dozens each. It was not meant to be a fight. It was meant to be an execution. Tai-Ho learned of it the morning of the match. Hana came to his cell with tears in her eyes. "They are going to kill you," she whispered. 3 against 1. "It is not possible. Even you cannot." "Then I will die," Tai-Ho said simply. He was wrapping cloth around his hands preparing, but not easily and not quietly. The fight was everything Ryun had hoped for. Tai-Ho fought like something more than human. He moved through the 3 gladiators like water through rocks, striking and retreating, never stopping, never slowing. He killed the first one with a throw that broke its neck. He killed the second with its own weapon, turned against it in a moment of overconfidence. The third one nearly killed him. Its blade went deep into Tai-Ho's stomach. But even as he fell, Tai-Ho's hands found its throat. They went down together. When the sand settled, only Tai-Ho was still breathing. Barely. His blood was soaking into the ground around him. His eyes were closing. The crowd was screaming, some cheering, some booing, all of them shocked. In her viewing box, Empress Vela stood. Her hands gripped the railing so hard her knuckles had turned pale. "Bring me the physicians," she commanded. "The best ones, now." Ryun stared at her. "Empress, he is just a human. He is nothing. Let him, now." Vela's voice was ice. Her silver eyes burned with something that made even the great general step back. "Save him. That is a command." She did not understand why she cared. She did not want to understand. But as she watched them carry Tai-Ho's broken body from the arena, she knew one thing with perfect clarity. This human could not die. Not yet. Not like this. She needed to know why he made her feel alive again. Tai-Ho woke in a room of white light and soft silence. For a moment, he thought he was dead. The ceiling above him was smooth and clean. The bed beneath him was softer than anything he had ever felt. The air smelled like flowers he could not name. This was not the dirty medical bay where they treated gladiators. This was something else entirely. He tried to sit up and pain exploded through his body. He gasped and fell back against the pillows. His stomach was wrapped in bandages. His arms were connected to machines that hummed quietly. He was alive, but barely. "You should not move yet," the voice came from near the window. Tai-Ho turned his head slowly and saw her. Empress Vela stood with her back to the starlight, looking out at the void beyond the ship. She wore simple clothes today, not the elaborate robes of the throne room. Her silver eyes reflected the distant stars. "Why am I here?" Tai-Ho's voice was rough, broken. "Because I commanded it." Vela did not turn around. "You nearly died. The physicians say it is a miracle you survived at all. Something about human biology being surprisingly resilient. That does not answer my question." Now she turned. Her face was unreadable. The cold mask of an empress who had ruled for over a century. "You interest me," she said simply. "I wanted to understand why." Tai-Ho stared at her. Even now, broken and bleeding in a strange bed, he did not look away. He did not show fear. "There is nothing to understand," he said. "I am just a human. Your people have killed millions of us. I am nothing special." Vela walked slowly toward the bed. Her footsteps made no sound on the floor. She stopped beside him and looked down with those four silver eyes. You held a bunker for 18 hours against my soldiers. You killed a Vorn with a bone. You defeated 3 veteran gladiators at once. And now you lie dying in my medical chamber and speak to me as if I am just another person. She tilted her head slightly. No one speaks to me like that. No one has spoken to me like that in 100 years. Then your people are cowards. The words hung in the air. Any other prisoner would be executed for such words. But Vela did not call for guards. Instead, the corner of her mouth moved. It was almost a smile. Perhaps they are, she said softly. She sat in a chair beside his bed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The machines hummed. The stars turned slowly beyond the window. Why do you fight? Vela asked finally. Your planet is gone. Your people are slaves. You have no hope of victory. So why do you keep fighting? Taiho was quiet for a while. When he answered, his voice was tired but honest. Because it is the only thing I have left. The fighting, the surviving. It is all that remains of who I used to be. He paused. I had a sister, Yuna. She was only 16. She wanted to be a musician. She used to sing songs that made people cry with happiness. What happened to her? Your soldiers happened to her. Vela did not look away. She did not apologize. But something in her expression changed. A shadow of something that might have been regret. I have killed many worlds, she said quietly. I do not remember their names anymore. There have been too many species, too many civilizations. All of them gone because I commanded it. She looked at her hands. I used to believe it was necessary, that the strong must rule and the weak must serve. That is the way of the universe. And now I am tired. The word seemed to surprise even her. I have ruled for so long. I have been feared for so long. But I cannot remember the last time someone saw me as anything other than a weapon. Taiho looked at her. This ancient creature who commanded fleets that could destroy worlds. She sat beside his bed like a lost child, and he saw something he had not expected to see. Loneliness. Then we have something in common, he said. Vela's eyes met his. For a moment the Empress disappeared, and there was only a woman who had forgotten what it meant to be seen. Taiho healed slowly. Days turned into weeks, and every day Vela came to his room. At first she said it was to observe his recovery. Then she said it was because she had questions about human biology. Then she stopped making excuses. They talked for hours, about everything, about nothing. She told him about the early days of the Empire, when she was young and full of fire. He told her about Earth, the blue oceans and green forests that existed now only in memory. She spoke of the burden of immortality, of watching everyone she ever cared about grow old and die while she remained unchanged. He spoke of the burden of mortality, of knowing that every moment could be your last. They were so different, and yet they understood each other in ways that should have been impossible. When Taiho was strong enough to stand, Vela made a decision that shocked her entire court. The human will no longer fight in the arena, she announced. He will serve as my personal guard. The throne room exploded with protests. General Ryun stepped forward, his face twisted with fury. This is madness. A human? Guarding the Empress? He is an insect, a pest. He cannot. He has proven himself more capable than any gladiator in the pits. Vela's voice was calm and cold. He has shown more courage than most of my generals, and he does not bore me with constant complaints. She looked directly at Ryun. Can you say the same? Ryun fell silent, but his eyes burned with hatred as he looked at Taiho. And so Taiho became the shadow of the Empress. He followed her to diplomatic meetings with alien lords. He stood beside her at war councils where the fates of billions were decided. He watched her navigate a web of politics so complex it made his head spin, and slowly he began to understand. Vela was not just a conqueror. She was a player in a game that had been going on for centuries. Enemies surrounded her, nobles who wanted her throne, generals who wanted her power, religious leaders who believed she had betrayed the old ways. Every day was a battle just to survive, and she fought it alone. At night, when the court was empty and the guards were dismissed, they would walk together through the great halls of the Eternal Dominion. They would talk in quiet voices about small things, books they had read, music they loved, dreams they had forgotten. Hana saw the change in Taiho. The other human slaves saw it too. He walked differently now, not like a prisoner, like a man with something to protect. "You are getting too close to her," Hana warned him one night. "Others have tried. Others have died. She is the Empress. She cannot love. She can only use." "You may be right," Taiho said. "Then why do you stay?" He thought about it for a long moment. Because beneath all the power and all the fear, she is just a person, alone in a way that most people cannot understand. He paused. "And I know what that feels like." Hana shook her head. "You are going to get yourself killed. Perhaps, but at least it will mean something." That night, Taiho stood guard outside Vela's chamber when she called him inside. She was standing by the window again, looking at the stars. Her silver eyes were wet. "Do you know what the worst part of living forever is?" she asked without turning around. "Tell me." "You forget how to feel. You build walls around your heart because feeling things only leads to pain. And eventually those walls become so thick that nothing can get through anymore." She finally turned to face him. "But somehow you did." Taiho did not know what to say, so he said the only thing that seemed true. "You do not have to be alone. Not if you do not want to be." She looked at him for a long time. Then she did something she had not done in over a century. She stepped forward and rested her head against his shoulder. Taiho held her gently, this ancient creature who could destroy worlds with a word, and he felt her tremble in his arms like a small, frightened thing that had finally found shelter from a storm. They stood like that until the stars turned. Far away in the dark corners of the ship, General Ryun watched the surveillance feed with cold satisfaction. He had what he needed now. Evidence. Proof that the Empress had been compromised by a human pet. He turned to High Priest Morak, who stood in the shadows. "You were right," Ryun said. "She has become weak." Morak's eyes glittered with religious fire. "Then we must save the Empire from her corruption." The coup was beginning. The whispers spread through the eternal dominion like poison in water. The Empress has a human pet. The Empress speaks to it at night. The Empress has forgotten her duty. The Empress has gone mad. Taiho heard the whispers. So did Vela. Neither of them spoke about it. There were more important things to discuss. The Empire was holding a grand summit. Representatives from all 40 star systems were gathering on the flagship to discuss trade, territory, and the ongoing expansion into new sectors. It was a time of politics and danger. Every noble house would send its best schemers. Every faction would try to gain advantage. Taiho stood in the shadows as Vela met with ambassador after ambassador. He watched how they looked at her, some with fear, some with false respect, some with hunger in their eyes waiting for a moment of weakness. "You have made enemies," he told her that night in her chambers. "I have always had enemies." Vela was sitting at her desk reviewing reports. She looked tired. The summit was draining her. "That is the price of power. These enemies are different. They are organized. I can see it in the way they move, the way they speak to each other. Something is coming." Vela smiled slightly. "And how would a former soldier know about court politics?" "War is war. The weapons are different, but the tactics are the same." Taiho stepped closer. "You are surrounded, Empress. Your flanks are exposed. If you do not act soon, they will act first." She looked up at him. The silver light in her eyes was soft tonight, vulnerable. "What would you have me do? Arrest everyone who might be a threat? Execute nobles based on suspicion? That is how empires fall." "No, that is how empires become afraid." Taiho knelt beside her chair. "But there is a difference between being careful and being blind. You know who your enemies are. You are too intelligent not to know. So why do you let them move freely?" Vela was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his face gently. "Because I am tired of killing," she said softly. "I have killed so many, for so long. I thought perhaps if I stopped, if I showed mercy, things might change. Mercy is a gift you give to those who deserve it. Your enemies do not deserve it. They mistake your kindness for weakness." "And what do you see when you look at me? Weakness?" Taiho shook his head. "I see strength that has been alone for too long. I see power that has forgotten why it fights. I see someone who needs to remember that she is not just an empress, she is a warrior. Vela's eyes glistened. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. You strange little human, she whispered. What have you done to me? The next day was the final ceremony of the summit. All the representatives gathered in the great hall. Vela sat on her throne in full imperial regalia, surrounded by her honor guard. Tai-Ho stood just behind her, invisible to most, watching everything. The ceremony was long and boring. Speeches about loyalty, promises of cooperation, empty words from empty people. But Tai-Ho was not listening to the words. He was watching the movements, the small signals, the glances exchanged between certain nobles. He saw one of them reach slowly beneath his robes. Time seemed to slow. Tai-Ho did not think. His body simply moved. The blade came out of the darkness, aimed at Vela's throat. It was fast, faster than any normal person could react to. But Tai-Ho was not normal anymore. Months in the arena had turned him into something else, something that reacted before the mind could process. He stepped between the Empress and the blade. The weapon meant for Vela's throat went into Tai-Ho's shoulder instead. He grunted with pain but did not fall. Instead, he grabbed the assassin's arm and twisted. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the silent hall. Then Tai-Ho's other hand found the assassin's throat and squeezed until the light left his eyes. The body fell. Tai-Ho stood over it, bleeding, breathing hard. The great hall erupted in chaos. Guards rushed forward. Nobles screamed and fled. But Vela did not move. She stared at Tai-Ho with an expression he had never seen before. You saved me, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. That is my job, Tai-Ho replied. Then his legs gave out and he collapsed. He woke 3 days later in the White Room again. The wound was serious. The blade had been poisoned, something designed to kill Keth physiology. On a human, it worked differently. It did not kill him, but it came close. Vela was there when he opened his eyes. She had not left his side for 3 days. The servants whispered about it. The nobles plotted about it. She did not care. You should have let me die, she said quietly. The blade was meant for me. Then they would have won. They may still win. The assassin was from House Morak. The high priest has been calling for reform for years. This attack proves he has moved beyond words. Tai-Ho tried to sit up. Pain flooded his body, but he pushed through it. Then we need to act. We. Vela looked at him with something between hope and fear. There is no we. I am the Empress. You are. A human. A slave. A pet. Yes, I know what I am. Tai-Ho's voice was hard. But I am also the person who took a blade meant for your heart. So when I say we, I mean it. Your enemies are my enemies. Your battles are my battles. Until my last breath. Vela's mask cracked. A tear rolled down her blue cheek. Why? She asked. Why would you give your life for me? I conquered your world. I killed your people. I took everything from you. Because you also gave me something. Tai-Ho reached out and took her hand. Purpose. Connection. A reason to live beyond just survival. I thought I had lost all of that when my people fell. But then I met you, and I realized that even in darkness, there can be light. She broke then. The cold empress. The ancient warrior. The ruler of 40 stars. She fell into his arms and wept like a child. All the centuries of loneliness, all the walls she had built, came crashing down. And Tai-Ho held her, a human holding an empress, a slave holding a god. They stayed like that for a long time. When they finally separated, something had changed between them, something that could not be taken back. I think I am falling in love with you, Vela said. The words seemed strange in her mouth, like a language she had forgotten how to speak. I think I already fell, Tai-Ho replied. Far below in the dark corridors of the ship, General Ryun met with High Priest Morak. The assassination attempt had failed, but it had revealed something even more valuable. She protected the human with her own guards, Ryun growled. She stayed at his side for 3 days. She has completely lost her mind. Morak nodded slowly. His ancient face was calm, but his eyes burned with fanatic fire. The Empress has been corrupted by outside influence. The holy texts are clear. When a ruler strays from the path, the faithful must correct the course. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that the Empire needs a new ruler, one who remembers the old ways, one who will not sully the bloodline with alien weakness. Ryun smiled coldly. And who would this new ruler be? That is not important. What matters is removing the current corruption. Morak leaned closer. I have the support of the religious faction. You have the loyalty of the military. Together we have enough strength to take the throne. A coup? You are talking about overthrowing the Empress. I am talking about saving the Empire. Morak's voice dropped to a whisper. The human must die, and if the Empress cannot let him go, then she must die with him. Ryun thought about it for only a moment. He had served Vela for decades. He had believed in her strength. But watching her weep over a human in the medical bay had destroyed something inside him. When do we strike? He asked. Morak's smile was the smile of a serpent. Soon, very soon. Above them, unaware of the plot forming in the darkness, Taiho and Vela held each other and dreamed of a future that might never come. The attack came at midnight. Taiho woke to the sound of explosions. The ship shook beneath him. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Red emergency lights painted everything the color of blood. He was on his feet before he was fully awake, moving through the darkness toward Vela's chambers. But the corridors were filled with soldiers he did not recognize. They wore the symbols of Morak's religious guard and Ryun's military elite. The coup had begun. Taiho did not try to fight through them. There were too many. Instead, he slipped into the maintenance tunnels that Hana had shown him months ago. The ship was a maze of hidden passages, ventilation shafts, and forgotten corridors. The Keth had built it so large that they had forgotten parts of it existed. He moved like a ghost through the darkness, listening to the sounds of battle above. Gunfire, screams, the clash of metal against metal. Vela's loyal guards were fighting, but they were outnumbered, outplanned. He found Hana in the slave quarters. She was organizing the other humans, trying to keep them calm. They have the Empress, she told him. Her face was pale with fear. Ryun's soldiers took her an hour ago. They are holding her in the throne room. How many guards? Hundreds, maybe more. The ship is under their control. All the loyal commanders are either dead or locked away. Taiho's mind raced. He needed information. He needed weapons. He needed allies. He looked at the humans crowded in the small room. 23 of them, the same ones who had survived the fall of Proxima 7. They were thin and tired and beaten down by years of slavery. But beneath the exhaustion, he could see something else. A spark that had never quite died. They think we are weak, Taiho said quietly. They have always thought we are weak. We are small. We are soft. We do not have claws or fangs or stone skin. He paused. But they are wrong. Humans are not weak. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived ourselves. We built ships that crossed the stars. We dreamed impossible dreams and made them real. He looked at each of them in turn. Tonight they expect us to hide, to cower, to wait for death. Tonight we show them what humans really are. No one spoke. No one moved. Then an old man named Do-hoon stepped forward. He had been a farmer on Earth before the invasion. His hands were cracked and worn from decades of work. What would you have us do? He asked. Fight, sabotage, distract, whatever we can do to make their lives difficult. Taiho turned to Hana. You know this ship better than anyone. Can you get us into the power systems? The communications hub? The weapons storage? Hana's eyes were wide. You want to start a war against an empire. I want to save someone I love, and if that means bringing this entire ship down around them, then so be it. Something changed in Hana's expression. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Something that looked like hope. Follow me, she said. The next 6 hours were chaos. The humans moved through the ship like water through cracks in stone. They could not fight the Keth soldiers directly, but they could break things. Cut wires, jam doors, flood corridors with steam. Start fires in supply rooms. The rebels had expected a quiet takeover. They had not expected the ship itself to turn against them. Taiho led a small team to the prisoner cells where Vela's loyal commanders were being held. The guards were distracted by a fire that Hana had started 3 corridors away. By the time they realized what was happening, Taiho had already freed 6 officers. One of them was a female commander named Soren. She was young for a Keth, barely 100 years old, and her eyes burned with fury. "Where is the Empress?" she demanded. "Throne room, heavily guarded. They are planning a public execution." Soren's jaw tightened. "We do not have enough soldiers. Ryun has the entire military wing. We do not need soldiers." Taiho was already moving. "We need chaos." The plan was insane, suicidal, exactly the kind of thing that humans were best at. The freed officers split up and began rallying whatever loyal troops they could find. Hana coordinated the slave uprising from the ventilation system, using her knowledge of the ship to stay one step ahead of the rebels. The humans kept sabotaging everything they could touch, and Taiho headed straight for the throne room. He knew he could not fight his way through hundreds of soldiers, but he did not need to fight them. He just needed to get inside. The throne room had a weakness, a single weakness that no one thought about because no one was crazy enough to use it. The main viewing window, 20 meters of reinforced crystal, looked out into space. Behind the throne was an emergency airlock designed for escape pods in case of catastrophic failure. No one had used it in 50 years. No one even remembered it existed, except Hana. Taiho climbed through maintenance shafts until he reached the outer hull. He had stolen an emergency suit from a storage locker. It was designed for Keth bodies, too big for him, but it would keep him alive in vacuum for 10 minutes. He crawled along the outside of the ship. The Eternal Dominion was the largest vessel Taiho had ever seen. Walking along its hull, with the stars spinning below and above and all around, was like walking on the edge of infinity. One wrong step, and he would fall forever into the darkness. He reached the emergency airlock. His fingers were numb from the cold that seeped through the oversized suit. His oxygen was running low, but he found the manual override and began cranking it open. Inside the throne room, the execution was about to begin. Empress Vela knelt on the floor before her own throne. Her hands were bound with energy chains. Her beautiful robes were torn. Blood dripped from a wound on her forehead where Ryan had struck her. Ryan himself stood over her, holding a ceremonial blade. Behind him, High Priest Morak addressed the gathered nobles through a broadcast that was being sent to every corner of the empire. "The Empress has betrayed her sacred duty," Morak declared. "She has allowed an inferior species to corrupt her judgment. She has forgotten the glory of the Keth. Today, we restore the empire to its rightful path." Vela looked up at Ryun. Despite everything, she did not beg. She did not plead. She simply stared at him with those silver eyes that had seen 2 centuries of war and death. "You are making a mistake," she said quietly. "The humans are not inferior. They are just different. And one day that difference will destroy you." Ryan laughed. "Humans? Destroy us? Your pet was amusing, I admit, but he is nothing. Probably dead in some corner of the ship, hiding like the coward all humans are." The emergency airlock behind the throne exploded inward. Taiho came through like a meteor, still in the oversized Keth suit, moving with speed born from desperation. The guards by the airlock did not even have time to turn before he was past them. The throne room erupted in chaos. Nobles scattered. Guards shouted. Ryun spun around, his face twisted with shock and rage. Taiho did not stop. He ran straight through the chaos, dodging and weaving, taking hits that would have killed a normal person. Nothing mattered except reaching her. He reached her. He fell to his knees beside Vela and began working on her chains. His hands were shaking. Blood was pouring from wounds he did not remember receiving. "You came," Vela whispered. "You impossible, stubborn, beautiful human. You came." "Of course I came." Taiho managed to break one chain. "I told you, your battles are my battles." "Guards!" Ryan screamed. "Kill them both! Kill them now!" The soldiers rushed forward. Taiho knew they were going to die. There were too many. He was too weak. But at least they would die together. Then the doors of the throne room exploded. Commander Soren charged in with 50 loyal soldiers. Behind them came humans, slaves, and workers who had spent years being told they were nothing. They fought with whatever they could find. Pipes, tools, their bare hands. The battle for the empire had begun. In the chaos, Hana appeared beside Taiho. She was bleeding from a cut on her arm, but her eyes were alive with fire. "We need to go," she said. The Loyalists are losing. We cannot win this fight. I know. Taiho helped Vela to her feet. That is why we are not going to fight it here. He had a plan. It was desperate, probably impossible, exactly like everything else he had ever done. They needed to reach the broadcast center. If they could get Vela in front of the Empire, show that she was alive, prove that the coup was built on lies, things might change. It was a small chance, but it was the only chance they had. They ran. Behind them, Ryun watched them flee. His face was purple with rage. "Find them," he screamed. "Find them and bring me their heads." The hunt was on, and they had 6 hours until Morak's fleet arrived to cement the rebellion. 6 hours to save an empire. They ran through corridors filled with smoke and fire. Loyal soldiers and rebels fought in every hallway. The Eternal Dominion was tearing itself apart. Taiho led the way, with Vela beside him and Hana just behind. Commander Soren had stayed back to hold the throne room, buying them precious minutes. The sound of her final battle echoed behind them until it was swallowed by distance. "The broadcast center is in the command tower," Vela said. She was wounded and exhausted, but she moved with the grace of someone who had survived 200 years of war. "We will have to cross the main bridge to reach it." "The main bridge will be heavily guarded," Taiho replied. "Yes, Ryun will have his best soldiers there." Taiho nodded grimly. He had expected nothing less. They gathered what allies they could find along the way. A handful of loyal guards. A group of human slaves who refused to hide anymore. Engineers and workers who had decided that dying on their feet was better than living on their knees. By the time they reached the main bridge, their small army numbered about 40. Facing them were over 200 of Ryun's elite soldiers. The bridge stretched across a massive chasm that ran through the center of the ship. On the other side, the command tower rose like a metal mountain. The broadcast center was at its peak. Ryun himself stood at the center of the bridge. He had abandoned the throne room to personally stop them. His scars seemed to glow in the red emergency light. His eyes found Taiho in the crowd. "Human," he called out. His voice echoed across the chasm. "You have caused me a great deal of trouble. I was content to let you die slowly in the pits. But you had to become special. You had to become her weakness." Taiho stepped forward. The two armies faced each other across 20 meters of empty bridge. "She is not weak," Taiho said. "You are just too blind to see her strength." Ryan laughed. "Her strength? She is an empress who fell in love with a pet. She has forgotten what made the Keth great. The hunger, the fire, the will to conquer. Maybe greatness is not about conquering." Taiho's voice was calm, steady. "Maybe it is about building, protecting, learning from those who are different instead of destroying them. Philosophy from a human." Ryun drew his blade. It was a massive weapon, nearly as long as Taiho was tall. "Let us see how your philosophy protects you now," he charged. What happened next would become legend across the Empire. Ryun was the greatest warrior the Keth had produced in a century. He had killed hundreds in personal combat. His speed and strength were beyond anything a human could match. Every advantage was on his side. But Taiho did not fight like a human. He did not fight like anyone. Months in the arena had burned away everything soft in him. Every movement was efficient. Every breath was purposeful. He did not try to block Ryun's massive blade. He simply was not where the blade landed. He moved like water around stone, like wind through trees. Ryan attacked again and again. Each strike should have killed Taiho. Each strike missed by centimeters. The general grew frustrated, then angry, then desperate. "Stand still," he roared. "Fight like a warrior." "This is how I fight," Taiho replied. "You just never bothered to learn." He had been watching Ryun for months, studying him in war councils, observing how he moved when he was confident, how he shifted his weight when he was angry. The great general had patterns he did not know he had. Weaknesses he had never needed to hide because no one had ever survived long enough to find them. Taiho found them. Ryun's blade came down in a killing arc, but Taiho was already inside his guard, too close for the long weapon to reach. The general tried to step back, to create distance, but his rear foot landed on a patch of oil that Taiho had noticed 10 seconds earlier. He slipped, just for a moment, just long enough. Taiho drove a broken metal shard into the soft joint behind Ryun's knee. The general screamed and fell. Tai-Ho climbed onto his chest and put the shard against his throat. For a long moment, no one moved. 200 soldiers stared in disbelief at the impossible scene. Their greatest warrior, defeated by a human. "Yield," Tai-Ho said quietly. Ryun's eyes burned with hatred. "Never. I would rather die than surrender to you." "I know." Tai-Ho pressed the shard deeper. A thin line of blue blood appeared. "But dying is easy. Living with failure is harder. So I am going to let you live. You will watch as everything you tried to destroy survives. You will watch as the empire changes. You will know that you lost not to an army, but to one human who would not give up." He stood and stepped back. Ryun lay on the bridge, defeated, humiliated, alive. The enemy soldiers looked at each other. Their leader was down. Their certainty was shattered. Slowly, one by one, they lowered their weapons. Vela walked forward. Despite her wounds, despite her torn robes, she looked every inch an empress. Her silver eyes swept across the soldiers who had betrayed her. "You have a choice," she said. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. "Continue this rebellion and die for a cause that is already lost, or remember your oaths and stand with your empress." One soldier knelt, then another, then dozens. The bridge filled with the sound of armored knees hitting metal. Tai-Ho took Vela's hand. "We need to reach the broadcast center," he said. "Morak's fleet is still coming. We need the Empire to see you are alive." They crossed the bridge together. Their small army followed, swelled now by surrendered rebels who had remembered their loyalty. The broadcast center was controlled by Morak's priests. They fought with religious fury, screaming about corruption and purification. But they were not soldiers. They were old men with ancient beliefs, and they could not stand against the tide that swept through them. Tai-Ho personally cleared the final room. 3 priests fell before him before the last one surrendered. Hana took control of the broadcast system. Her fingers flew across the controls, overriding blocks and opening channels. "Broadcasting to the entire empire," she announced. "Audio and visual. Every ship, every station, every colony." Vela stepped in front of the camera. Behind her, Tai-Ho stood in the shadows, bleeding and battered, but still upright. "Citizens of the Empire," Vela began. Her voice was strong, clear, commanding. "You have been told that I am dead. You have been told that I betrayed you. These are lies." She told them everything. The coup, the conspiracy, the religious fanaticism that had twisted honorable soldiers into traitors. She showed them the evidence that Hana had gathered during their flight through the ship. And then she did something that shocked everyone. "I have been your empress for over a century," she continued. "In that time, I have conquered worlds and destroyed civilizations. I believed this was strength. I believed this was greatness. I was wrong." She reached back and took Tai-Ho's hand, pulling him into the light beside her. "This human showed me a different kind of strength. The strength to endure, the strength to hope when hope seems foolish, the strength to love even when love makes you vulnerable. These are not weaknesses. They are the foundations upon which true empires are built." Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched. Keth nobles who had supported the coup felt their certainty waver. Military commanders who had been preparing to join Morak hesitated. The tide of rebellion slowed. "High Priest Morak," Vela said, looking directly into the camera. "Your fleet approaches. You believe you will find victory here. You are wrong. Turn back now, and there may be mercy. Continue, and there will be only justice." The broadcast ended. For a long moment, everyone in the room held their breath. Then Hana looked up from her console, her face filled with wonder. "Morak's fleet is stopping," she said. "They are holding position. Not retreating, but not advancing either." "They are waiting to see what happens," Vela said. "Waiting to see if the Empire follows me or Morak." "What do we do now?" Tai-Ho asked. Vela smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Now we wait, and we trust that the Empire has not completely forgotten what honor means." They waited through the longest hours of their lives. One by one, ships and stations sent messages of loyalty. Not all of them, but enough. Morak's support crumbled as commanders remembered their oaths and turned against the rebellion. By morning it was over. Morak's remaining followers surrendered. The high priest himself was found in his quarters, dead by his own hand rather than face the empress he had betrayed. Taiho finally allowed himself to collapse. The battle was won. Vela was safe. The empire would survive. As darkness took him, he felt gentle hands catching him. He heard Vela's voice thick with emotion. "Rest now, my warrior. You have earned it." For the first time in months, Taiho slept peacefully. 3 months passed like water flowing downhill. The rebellion was crushed completely. Morak's followers were tried and sentenced. The military officers who had joined Ryon faced justice as well. Some were executed, others were imprisoned. A few, those who had surrendered early and proven their remorse, were given a chance to redeem themselves. Ryun himself lived, as Taiho had promised. He was stripped of his rank and sent to a prison colony on the edge of the empire. He would spend the rest of his long life watching the changes he had tried to prevent. It was a worse punishment than death. The Eternal Dominion needed repairs. Hundreds had died in the fighting. The throne room still carried the scars of battle, but the ship survived. The empire survived, and slowly things began to change. Empress Vela announced a new policy toward conquered species. No more slavery, no more gladiator pits. The humans who had survived would be given a world of their own, a planet called New Earth, with full rights and protection under imperial law. Other species would be offered the same chance over time. The Keth nobles were shocked. Many protested. But after the coup, no one dared openly challenge the empress. She had proven that she was stronger than they believed. Taiho stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Dominion, watching a blue-green world rotate slowly beneath them. New Earth. It was not the same as the original. The oceans were smaller, the continents shaped differently, but it had grass and trees and air that humans could breathe. It was a place where his people could start again. Hana found him there. She was dressed in clothes he had never seen her wear before. Clean, new, the clothes of a free woman. "The transports are almost ready," she said. "The first wave of colonists will land by evening." "You should be with them," Hana smiled. "I am going to lead the settlement. The others voted for me. Can you believe it? A former slave, leading a colony." "I believe it." Taiho looked at her. "You kept us alive when we had no hope. You organized the uprising that saved the empire. You deserve this." She was quiet for a moment. Then she stepped closer. "You could come with us. You have done enough. No one would blame you for wanting to rest, for wanting to go home." Taiho shook his head slowly. "That is not my home anymore. It looks like it. It might even feel like it. But I have changed too much. I belong somewhere else now." Hana nodded. She had expected this answer. "She is lucky to have you," she said. "The Empress, I mean. She does not deserve you, but she is lucky. Maybe we deserve each other." Taiho smiled slightly. Two broken people trying to build something whole. They embraced, not as lovers, but as family, as soldiers who had survived the impossible together. "Take care of our people," Taiho said. "Take care of yourself," Hana replied. She walked away toward the transport bay. Taiho watched until she was gone. Then he turned back to the window in the blue-green world below. He stayed there for a long time, remembering Earth, his sister, his squad, all the people he had lost, all the reasons he had fought. The pain was still there, buried deep. It would never truly go away, but it was softer now, mixed with something that felt almost like hope. Footsteps approached, soft, nearly silent, but Taiho had learned to recognize those footsteps in the dark. "You did not go with them," Vela said. She stood beside him, looking out at the planet that bore humanity's name. "My place is here." "That is not an answer." Taiho turned to face her. She was beautiful in the starlight, ancient and young, powerful and vulnerable. The Empress who ruled 40 star systems, standing beside the human soldier who had taught her what it meant to love. "My people are down there because of what we built together," he said. "What kind of man would I be if I abandoned that?" Vela's silver eyes glistened. "You gave up your home for me. I found a new home." He took her hand. "Home is not a place. It is a person. And you are my person." She stepped closer. Her forehead touched his. For a moment, there was nothing else in the universe. Just the two of them, breathing together, existing together. The court will never accept this, she whispered. A human beside the throne. It will take years, maybe centuries. Then we have a lot of work to do. She laughed. It was a small sound, but genuine. The laugh of someone who had forgotten how to laugh and was slowly remembering. I love you, she said. I do not know why. I do not know how. But I love you, Taiho. I love you too, Vela. They stood together and watched the ships carry Taiho's people to their new home. The Empire watched with shock and confusion, and slowly, dawning respect. The story spread across the galaxy like fire. The human who had been condemned to die in the arena. The human who had saved the Empress from assassination. The human who had led a rebellion that saved the Empire itself. The human who now stood beside the throne, not as a pet, not as a servant, but as an equal. Some called it madness. Others called it corruption. But a growing number called it something else. They called it hope. 10 years passed. The Empire was different now, not perfect. Change came slowly, and there were those who fought against it at every step. But progress was real. Species that had once been slaves now sat on councils. Trade flourished where conquest had once ruled. The Keth learned slowly that partnership could bring more wealth than war. Taiho walked through the palace courtyard, his hair now gray at the temples. He had aged as humans did, while Vela remained unchanged. But she did not seem to mind. She said she loved watching him grow, watching time paint itself across his face like art. In the courtyard, young warriors trained, Keth and human and a dozen other species, all learning together. Taiho had designed the program himself, a new kind of warrior for a new kind of empire. Instructor, a young voice called out. Taiho turned and smiled. Running toward him across the courtyard was a child, a little girl, perhaps 6 years old. Her skin was a soft purple, lighter than Vela's blue. She had 2 eyes instead of 4, but they glowed with silver light. Her dark hair bounced as she ran. Mira, their daughter, the first hybrid ever born between human and Keth. The doctors had said it was impossible, but Taiho had learned to stop believing in impossible. He scooped her up in his arms and spun her around. She laughed with pure joy. Did you finish your lessons? He asked. Yes. Mother said I could come find you if I was good. And were you good? Mira thought about it seriously. Mostly. Taiho laughed. He set her down and took her hand. Together they walked toward the palace where Vela was waiting. The Empress stood on a balcony overlooking the courtyard. She was dressed in simple robes today, not the formal regalia of the throne room. When she saw Taiho and Mira approaching, she smiled. A real smile, warm and full of love. It was a smile that no one in the Empire had seen on her face for centuries. Not until a human had taught her how to wear it again. Mira ran ahead, racing up the stairs to throw herself into her mother's arms. Vela caught her and held her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her purple head. Taiho climbed the stairs slowly. He was not as fast as he used to be. His body carried scars from 100 battles, but he was happy, happier than he had ever imagined possible on that day when the Keth ships descended on Proxima 7. He reached the balcony and stood beside his family, his wife, his daughter, his future. Vela reached out and took his hand without looking away from Mira. She has your stubbornness, the Empress said. She has your eyes. She has both of us. Vela finally looked at him. And that is all she needs. Below them, the young warriors continued their training. Above them, the stars turned slowly in the eternal dance of the cosmos. And throughout the galaxy, the story was told and retold, passed from generation to generation. The story of an empire that feared nothing and no one. Until an empress loved a warrior they all underestimated. And everything changed. The end.